there, welcome back to Art of Awakening, and a huge welcome to you if you're new. My name is Ona Christie, and I'm like the magic mirror to your genius zone, and just offering you stuff to empower you to create a beautiful life in a beautiful world. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the energies. Right now, this is the week of coming up on the week of December 8th. Coming up on the full moon in Gemini. And so just a few words about the energy right now. The testing is something that's kind of coming forward, I think, a lot for a lot of people. Sort of like being tested and being, a lot of us have really kind of come through a lot of stuff in the last few years, worked through a lot of things, a lot of transitions. There's been a lot of shedding, and it feels like there's just another layer of being asked to dig even deeper, to find our truth, and to find, to take a stand. I think we're being asked to take a stand, really. And this may show up, if it doesn't resonate with you, great. Consider yourself blessed. But if it does, it may show up externally as just things going haywire, when you're trying to move forward with something, or it could be internally in terms of, it could be patterns, emotional patterns, or so forth, that may be coming forward again, maybe things that you felt like you've already worked through, but it's kind of coming up again. This idea of the Hydra, the many-headed monster, where you keep chopping off the heads and more of them come up. There are energies out there that they get, the patterns, and especially things that are deeply embedded in the psyche, in the culture, or in family bloodlines. A lot of that stuff is being called out to the light right now, and so it will feel like, it's just like, is this never going to end? I thought I was done with that. Here it is again. So if you're dealing with that kind of stuff, first of all, don't be afraid, okay? Because it's coming up. It's coming up because it's being really squeezed, right? And collectively, these things are starting to really feel the squeeze. So that's why they are coming up. A test is something that's, just happens before you step into the new level, right? We are really being asked to level up in a lot of ways, moving into this coming year, this 2020. And so this is just like, just breathe, because it's this is a test. It's only a test, right? And just hold true to who you are. There is a spirit animal that's coming forward for me. I usually pull cards. I'm not going to do that this week, because there's one that's really kind of come forward on its own that wants me to talk about it. It is the bear, which is one of my personal totems. And bear has a lot of different meanings, but what's really coming forward for me right now is this whole, it's like a really root chakra energy, this strength, this non-compromising. It's like, you don't mess with the bear, right? The bear is what it is. It's a bear. Everybody else has to deal with it, right? Okay, so that can come forward as a shadow kind of thing, right? If you're not controlling, or if you're not aware of how your energy goes, we can kind of let the bear aspect of ourselves and just kind of be all over the place. But it can also come forward as a very positive aspect, in that, when you finally realize your own truth, to be able to really step forward in a powerful way, in that, and no shame, right? Ditching any kind of idea of shame or guilt or anything about being who you are. Okay, so if we look at any of our wild people, by that I mean the animals, the plants, the minerals and stuff, every single one of them, the animals especially, I mean, it's like, well, all of them, but if you look at a wild animal, which I refer to as a wild person, or a wild human being, somebody who has retained that sense of kind of their wild nature, right? They're not going to be compromising who they are. And So, but this happens with most of us, right? We've all got these portions of ourself. We've got our higher self. That's our connection with the divine. And that is really kind of, we rewild ourselves when we start aligning with that higher self. Because sometimes it's stuff that it's like, it's not necessarily civilized, right? We can make it, we can kind of bring it forward in a civilized way. That's why we have an ego, and that's why we have a persona, is in order to help this wild aspect of who we are to come forward in a way that is not going to be like completely burning up everything, right? So like, it's important to have an ego, it's important to have a persona, is that face that you show the world, right? um, they are supposed to be supporting and helping this wild aspect, this true self, in order to help it to live in society. But what happens, of course, we all know this, is that these aspects, the ego and the persona, they get hijacked by, you know, whatever shadow that wants to pull us away out of alignment, and we get really kind of hijacked into that. And most of us have come to this place of, or coming out of this place of just this false ego, the lower ego, or the persona that is completely false, right? And trying to realign. When that happens, sometimes all this stuff gets shaken up, because like, if you think of any kind of realignment, things have got to fall away. Things have got to kind of shift in whatever. So this is just shifting that's happening, but it can be pretty intense. Like personally, I had all this emotional stuff coming up this past week, stuff around issues that I thought I had gone over, but it's just like kind of like the shadow of the shadow, or the dregs and stuff that is just being flushed out. Bear is coming in and saying, hey, look, it's time to really take a look at who it is that you are, and outside of any shame of that. Okay. And it also has, I'm feeling like there's this connection with sexuality too, because we're dealing with this, the sacral chakra, which is kind of, we're being asked to create the life that we really are here for. We're being asked to reinvent ourselves in alignment with the higher self. Okay, this is an act of creation, so it does incorporate that sacral chakra energy. Embracing your sexuality does not mean you have to go and pole dance or anything, right? It doesn't mean it is even necessarily going to be overtly a sexual kind of thing, but it is like, it is really coming down to embracing who you are as a creative being, and that has to ride on that, because the sacral rides right on top of the root. They're very closely connected, and if we're not being true to ourselves, which is that whole root chakra thing, feeling grounded and secure in who we are, then that sacral is going to be off, right? And you're going to end up in miscreation. A lot of the issues that we're working through right now have to do with that. If you think back to the Me Too movement of a couple of years ago, there was all that. There's a lot of victimhood that comes around that, okay? So we're being asked to let go of the victimhood, because no wild animal considers itself a victim. None. They don't. They don't consider themselves victim. They will fight, you know, if they need to, or they'll do whatever they need to do to survive. They're not in victim mode. Okay, and this is what nature has given them in terms of you know, every single last one of them has this feeling of, I deserve to be here. And this is a reclaiming of that. Okay, so we're being asked to reclaim who we are at a very, very deep fundamental level, so that we can reconstruct who we are on a more superficial level, in order to align with the truth of who we are. Okay, so this is very root and sacral chakra energy coming forward right now. Bear is actually perfect for that. And I want to tell you a story about a bear very, very briefly here. we all have, like, bear is a very nurturing, one of its connotations is the divine goddess, the divine feminine, right? And I have a painting here that's kind of come forward that I did a few years ago, which is this bear goddess. I'll try to post it again, but hopefully you can see this. This is this bear goddess, and she's overtly sexual. I mean, this is stuff she just channel. Okay, I channeled the stuff. It's not stuff that I decided I was going to do this, but she came forward as like, holy cow, what is this? This is from several years back. A lot of the times these come in years before I understand what the meaning is, but I'm feeling like her time has come, right? This is the year of the divine feminine really coming forward. And part of it is just releasing the bonds on this sexuality. And again, it does not mean that we have to all go, be free love, whatever. We can do it within the bounds of what's appropriate. But it's owning that sexual energy that we all have, whether we're masculine, feminine, both. We've got masculine energy. We all have masculine and feminine energy within us. And when we are doing any sort of creative work, whether it's creative arts or creating the life that we want to create, we're working with that energy. We're working with that sexual energy. And so any kind of beliefs or shame or guilt or whatever that's been instilled in us by society, that's part of why it's difficult for us. A lot of us are being tested right now or working through these energies, is because we are breaking those kind of concepts, those shame, guilt, victimhood, all that stuff. Got to break through that. That's a very, very powerful kind of controlling thing that the shadow has had on the collective and on us as individuals for millennia, is controlling through the sexual channels, right? And so it's time to say, hey, look, this isn't cool, right? I am a sexual being. I have this creative power within me, and in order to really step into that, we got to just release that feeling of, whatever it is, pleasing somebody else. Okay. And so the masculine's afraid that we're going to hurt, right? We're going to hurt somebody through this expression of our power. In our creative power, we create the life we want. Oh my God, who's it going to hurt, right? The feminine aspect is going to be afraid of displeasing or angering, right? Who's going to be upset? Okay, so we need to start being really cognizant of what it is, who it is that and it might be, who knows? I mean, it could show up as somebody in a relationship. It could be somebody in maybe it's your grandmother when you were 2 years old who got upset when you did something, right? So who are we? Who's that little whatever it is inside of us, that little ego that is afraid of either displeasing or harming somebody by stepping into our creative power, right? So being aware of that and reclaiming that. It's like I am a sacred, divine, creative being, and I have this sacred, divine, creative power, and I am that which I am. I am that I am. Okay, this is sacral en route. So whatever you can do this week, if you're feeling the energies this week, and if they are challenging to you, and if you are in one of these places where you're being asked to reinvent yourself, maybe you're needing to change things in relationships. Maybe you're needing to change your persona, what you look like, your brand, your job, your career, your whatever it is. And if you're finding challenges, then start looking at a little deeper. It's like, where's the fear? Who am I afraid of? And just know that you're beautiful, and that you've got this beautiful ability to, like, all of us have this power in us to make something just wholly different and beautiful, and reinvent all that we are and all that we are doing and being in the world. And part of it is about being, right? and just enjoying, because if we're tapping into our feminine sexuality, creative ability, some of that's just about being, right? The female is usually the one that sort of attracts, and she doesn't have to do anything to be attractive. She just is. Like, and if I'm looking at nature, right? She just is, right? And it's typically the male that will come to the female, because she's just exuding this beautiful, amazing sexual energy, right? We can all have that. When we get into that space of owning who it is we are and owning ourselves as creative beings and just allowing that flow to happen, things tend to just line up in our favor. It's beautiful. So before I let you go, I'm going to share one of my latest paintings here. This is a commission. It's just a traditional portrait of 3 dogs and a young man. And the reason I'm sharing it with you, besides just that I just finished it, the reason I'm sharing it with you is that I've been I'm going to be very transparent, been going through a lot of creative blocks over the past many years and coming out of that. And there's been a lot around, expressing through, and, that sacral kind of thing happening. And I was running into those with this particular painting, and fortunately the client was super understanding that it was taking me so long. And yes, I have had a lot of life changes for the past few months, but after a while it was like I was like asking my guides, what the heck is going on here, because this has been weeks, this is way overdue. And it's not that I love the subject is wonderful. I love doing the portrait work, and love paintings. Like, what's going on that I can't get myself to the studio to do this? And the answer was, you're afraid of failing. Basically, you're afraid that it's not going to be good enough, right? And so my guides were like, look, this isn't about you, and it's not about the subject. It's not about whether the subject ends up looking fine or not. It's not about the person who commissioned it, the subject's mother. It's not about her. It's not about pleasing her. It's about love. And they were like, just allow the love to flow through what you're doing, and everything's going to fall into place. Don't worry about it. Just devote it. And so when I went into the studio the last few times, it was like, okay, this is a gift to God. Just my being in the studio. It doesn't matter what it turns out looking like. Just my being here and being in this state of creating, bringing it into a state of love, was something that I could devote to God, and it became this whole transcendent thing. And I think, if we think of it, and I'm really sort of getting this image of somebody, maybe there's somebody watching this who is a nurse, or somebody who maybe works in an emergency room or something. I'm sort of getting this picture of that, or if it's anything else that you're being called to do right now that might feel really hard to you. Just think about taking whatever it is out of it. Like, I have to be here because of this, or whatever, and just devote the love of it, the love of just being and taking part in whatever this activity is, and devoting that to spirit. This doesn't mean that maybe it's a job that you do feel is eating away at you, right? It doesn't mean, okay, so being in the moment and embracing the moment, even if it's something that has been challenging for us, it does not mean that we have to give up the idea of bringing in something else, something better, or something different, right? Because they both work with that sacral energy. Being now and being in the flow and allowing it to flow, it can be very sacral energy kind of stuff, but so is the idea of creating something new, right? And I think sometimes we get in this, like, it's an either or, but it's not necessarily. right? So it's okay to want something new, something different, something, better or whatever it is, but we still have to be in the present. Okay. So just embracing both, but coming back to the truth of who you are. A bear is gonna, they're not gonna put on a persona of something else. We just deal with it, right? We are what we are. Again, the persona is here to help the bear to to live, but ultimately, whatever persona you come up with, by persona I mean just the face that you give to other people, it's got to align with who you are. So if and these things come back, and again, I'm coming back to root chakra things as well. It's like, at the very basic, if you're in a situation that is challenging and threatening your own physical well-being, of course, got to fight back for that, right? But we come through sometimes in different layers. Emotionally, we can be threatened too, and sometimes we don't recognize that. It's like if you are in a situation where you're emotionally, not able to smile anymore, it's just pulling you down emotionally, that's death, right? That's death. So if you're in some kind of situation where you find like you can't even smile, you can't even laugh, that's an emotional death. That's something that, okay, it's time to revisit that root chakra and strengthen that. And it's like, I'm not going to put up with that. This is a survival thing. If you're not finding the joy, if it's like the spiritual, not just like feeling just drawn down spiritually constantly in whatever situation this is also threatening your sense of self and foundational well-being at the spiritual level. Not cool. Okay, so this is a really good time. The energies right now for just really breaking up and recognizing the truth of, is this killing me? And if it is, it's not allowed to kill me, right? I'm stepping out of this. One last thing. I hope I didn't say this before. One last thing about Bear is that she's this nurturing thing, but she will, and I get that straight from a bear researcher, she will leave her babies if she feels like her life is threatened. Okay, so we all know about the protective mother bear, right? But she's not self-sacrificial. And the idea is nature instills this, and this is the shadow side, which sometimes this is about embracing the shadow, because sometimes the shadow is there for an instinctual reason. It's always there based on an instinctual response that is there for survival reasons. Okay, and the only reason it might be shadow is that it's being manipulated in a way that isn't going to help you, right? But sometimes we have to revisit the quote-unquote shadow. Sometimes those parts of us that are this kind of survival thing that normally aren't something that is going to help us, like sacrificing something that's really maybe close to you, right? Like the mother bear abandoning her babies. I'm not saying to abandon children or anything, but what I am saying is that sometimes we have these things that we're attached to that may actually be good things, right? Like having a really good job is a good thing, right? But if that job or something associated with it is eating away at you, sometimes you got to abandon that, just as an example, right? So this is really about really sticking to your guns, recognizing where's your truth, and doing whatever you need to do to realign yourself with who you are and to protect, to protect your core essence. Because the idea behind the mother bear, that kind of behavior is like she'll be able to live to another day where she can maybe raise another brood of cubs and be successful with that. And I'm not saying that everybody right now who's listening to this has to sacrifice to that level at all. But there's going to be something that we probably need to sacrifice if we're being challenged by stuff. And it may be just a part of our ego that needs to go. It's like, for me, it was like this little people pleaser, right? What if it just doesn't please her? oh my God, right? I can't even go there. So it was just sort of like, okay, owning it. For me also owning my own sexual power, right? Because there's a fear associated with that. What if I step into my real power? And by sexual, I don't mean, like, for me, it's all tied in with the creative stuff because it all runs through that sacral chakra. What if I actually bring this out to the world and step into this and own myself as an artist, as this creator being that I am? What if I do that? And I realized there's this little part of me, it's like, oh my God, that's so powerful. It's going to like really crush stuff. It's going to really maybe destroy stuff. Maybe it's like, oh my God, who am I going to hurt? Right. You know, in my case, probably my other business is going to, parts of that are going to have to, or all of it are going to have to go. Whoa, scary, right? That's the truth though. Okay. So we are being asked to rewild ourselves, to recognize, okay, this wild part of me, there's a part of that that is directly connected with source. And yes, it needs to be contained in a way. That's why we have an ego. That's why we have a persona, is to help that wild aspect of ourselves to function, right? But what happens sometimes, the ego, the persona, puts the wild thing in the cage, and that's where we've got all this stuff. That's why we're feeling these energies, because it's like this cage is being rattled. Okay, so open that door, let the wild thing out, and then support it in however it needs to do. You know, adapt to the wild rather than trying to get the wild to adapt to us. Right. So hope this has helped. If you feel like there's somebody that ought to hear this message, please do share it with them. And I always definitely appreciate your comments, your likes, your subscribes. You are so dear to my heart. Thank you so much for following me, and have a lovely, lovely week.